pjnet.tv. It is 9 p.m. East Coast time in the United States. You are watching The Bumper, PJNet Live. It's rolling. We are recording. We are streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And our guest is waiting in our green room. Our chat room is waiting for our guest. We'll start a countdown to... Well, good evening and welcome to pjnet.tv. It is infectious. It is almost cancerous. It is everywhere. You might be watching this on Twitter. You might be watching this on Facebook. You might be watching this on YouTube. If it's about 9 o'clock Eastern Time and you're seeing this, you're watching it live. You might be watching it later as it's recorded. If you are watching live, we invite you to come join the family in the live chat room at pjnet.tv. You can watch the same program there, but you'll meet some nice people. They're waiting for you now. They will friend you on Facebook and they will follow you on Twitter. All you got to do is show up and be a hero. So tonight it's always great to have a first-time guest, and a shout out again to our associate producer, Barbara, Sunbelt Girl, in the chat room. She has picked a winner this time, and she usually does. But I don't know how all this happened, but we are blessed to have a good old Alabama girl. Okay, now I've got a lot of friends in Alabama. I've got one more now. But let me tell you something. Alabama folks are good folks. They're about as good as Texas. And the only reason Texas is a little better is Texas is so big. You know what I'm talking about? And we're going to hear about Texas a little bit later on. But with us now, all the way from her home in Alabama, is Karen O. Allen. And Karen, apparently, from your writing, I take it that you have had an encounter with cancer.
Yes, I did. 20 years ago, actually now, I've been a survivor.
I bet you can remember the day.
I can. The diagnosis was January the 31st. So it's amazing. Survivors know the day. You're right. They
messed up the Super Bowl and everything.
I don't care about that. That didn't matter to me.
We're all done here. We'll have our next guest on at the bottom of the hour. You actually didn't play. You were involved in football in the band.
Well, I played in the band in high school, played that bell lyre, real pretty there, and enjoyed doing that. They asked for someone who knew how to play the piano and read music, and I fit the bill.
You did. Okay. Well, you're talented all the way around. It's been 20 years. You've survived it, but it still lives within you, but in a different way, because now you are ministering to others who are facing that monster.
Absolutely. I recall having a conversation with a friend who was a survivor. I asked her one time, I said, do I ever not think about cancer? And she said, you need to give yourself time. And I couldn't imagine when I got to that point that I would not be able to think about cancer anymore. But she was right. It is not something I think about every day. It is something that does come across my mind, of course, but I have learned to live in contentment. And that is true, I think, of any survivor, that they learn to live with contentment. But I also realized that it was not all about me. It was about encouraging other people going through this journey as well. And my position was unique in that not only was I experiencing cancer, I actually worked in a cancer center and was doing cancer research and was very familiar with patients and processes and what treatments there could be and what clinical trials were out there. And so it was real important for me all of a sudden to become not only that patient, but the researcher for other people as well.
You literally did know too much. Was that good or not good?
I think it was good. I like to think it was good because I could understand the role of research and how important science plays, but not to minimize the spiritual component. I knew that I needed more than just a medical plan of action. I needed a spiritual plan of action, which was every bit as important to me as anything else. So having a strong medical team at the medical center where I worked was certainly a positive thing, but as positive was having that strong spiritual component.
Well, I see three layers to this onion. And the first, the obvious layer that we think of is science, medical science.
Right.
And we certainly want to leverage that. But at this stage, medical science is the track record isn't that good. We can delay the symptoms. We don't have a cure for cancer. So then there is the psychological, and I'm thinking that the first reaction would be denial. No, this isn't happening. And you go through the same process as grief goes through. Denial, didn't happen. Anger, depression, the a cornucopia of emotions.
Yes.
None of them particularly good.
You're absolutely right. You really go through the entire gamut of emotions. And I think my denial was short. It was very surprising. I had no history, no family history, no symptoms to speak of. So it was a surprise for me. And then I think the acceptance came soon after, but I was as concerned about family members and loved ones as I was about myself. So my concerns kind of shifted to their needs and what the future held for not only myself, but for them.
Do you find yourself putting up a front on behalf of your family members and all those that I'm okay when you're really not?
Well, yes, you do wear a mask, or I did to some extent, because it wasn't all fake. I felt, once I could abandon my control to the Lord's hand, to know that He was in full control, then there really was a comfort in doing that. But I also knew people are watching me. I am a walking testimony, and I want it to be a testimony that is glorifying to God. So, yes, I wanted them to see I was not, my suffering, while some was internal, that um, it was confident. It was in the Lord's hands, and I needed to demonstrate that.
Well, you mentioned that you handed it over to the Lord because He is in control,
Right.
and He is. Make no mistake about it. He is in control.
Absolutely.
However, once you understand that, then you have to grapple with anger, because if He is in control, well, He should fix it. He loves us, right?
That's kind of a step I didn't spend a lot of time in. Anger was pointless as far as I was concerned. And I knew coming into this new journey of faith, as I realized it to be, that it was really an opportunity. And the reason I say that is because I had prayed a prayer that I would increase my faith.
Mm-hmm.
And to increase my faith, it was going to take a step beyond where I was. And I knew as soon as this diagnosis came, weeks after that prayer, that this was it. So in a weird sort of way, I was ready to grasp that. Was this the way I wanted it? Of course not. I mean, no one wants cancer, but I knew that I could use this experience to be a testimony and to strengthen my faith. And while in the process, um, let others see how God can do that.
Okay.
So my initial responses were not just about other people, but as I realized, the more that I was inspired through my journey and shared it with other people, that it was beginning to be broadcast literally around the world. And I was using email to communicate with people that I did not have regular touch with. And so that was my best means of communication. Little did I know it was being sent beyond their own email address to others beyond, that they were friends with, just to encourage them. When I learned this, then it began to impact me to realize, people are watching me.
Well, yes, and somebody might be watching right now, and my heart is focused on the viewer who's saying, well, if that was 20 years ago, she was a pretty mature woman by then, and she had faith, and but I'm 20 something or 30 something,
Right.
and I'm just not where she's at. I'm frightened. I'm scared. I'm mad. So this isn't helping me. What do you tell that? What do you tell that 20 something or 30 something that thinks their life is ahead of them? That mortality is very real and it might be over sooner than you think.
Right. Um, I was in my early 40s
Hmm.
at the time, and it was a shock for me. I had everything in front of me, a great career, great family, and then this enters my life. As for anyone, which cancer steps in unexpected and unwelcome,
Uninvited, yeah.
certainly, it's how your perspective, how you look at it, is how you determine what your response is going to be. You can determine that, yes, I can be angry. I can respond in an angry way, or I can confront this literally with faith, and I can choose to grow in faith. Anyone can make the choice. And as hard as it sounds, and I didn't like to hear it, even though my friend kept reminding me, we are responsible for our own reactions, our own responses. And it is up to us how we choose to respond. Yes, we can stay angry, or we can move through that anger, and we can benefit ourselves, we can benefit others, and we can choose to grow. And I chose to grow in a spiritual sense, taking advantage of the opportunity to do so. Does that Did it sound all cheery and rosy through the process? Absolutely not. Yes, there were many setbacks. There were, tears along the way. Certainly, it was a trying time for me, but it was an incredible journey because I handed it over to God. And I wanted to make it a spiritual journey, and I did. And God honored that.
You
And
just
anyone can choose to do that.
And anger is actually the easier choice. I mean, anybody can get angry.
It is.
And if I thought getting angry would do any good, I would encourage you to get angry. But you mentioned a friend, and I wanna ask you more about that. But before we go into the friend
Uh-huh.
that you mentioned, I want to mention a mutual friend, J.D. Winninger, who's scheduled to be on at the bottom of the hour. Let me tell you about JD, and this is not the first time he has done this. JD just sent me a private message saying, take however much time you want to take. I can come on later because I'm being blessed by what's being presented. So that's the kind of friend JD is. You mentioned that in your anger that a friend was there at your side. Tell us about the role of that friend.
Oh, she was so supportive, absolutely supportive. And I can recall telling her, help me be positive by never using the word no, by saying things that are positive and approaching me with positive, comments. And she did that. She did honor that, and I appreciated that so much. It just helped me to be motivated, not to lean toward that depressive state or the anger side, like you said, because that is the easier route, no doubt.
Anybody can get angry. That doesn't
And
take a lot.
I would use her support as well as family support, friend support, church support. You cannot have too much support ever. So, especially when you're dealing with a beast like cancer, get as much support as you possibly can. Don't try to hide that you need it, and it's okay to ask for it. It's okay to be on as many prayer lists as there are that people are willing to place you on.
Mm-hmm.
Not to hide this and go through it by yourself. Support is vital through that process. So being positive is helpful because it centers your mind, it focuses you towards a higher level, a more godly overview perspective. And I think that's important in the healing process. Honestly, it definitely helps to heal you and to motivate you better.
Every once in a while, I put out a post on social media that says the following: be the answer to someone else's prayer today.
Yes.
We're all praying for things. God, do
Yes.
this. God, do that. Like God serves us. But very few of us, many people that are watching this, and we have multitudes, legions of people watching this. Now, if you're out there and you're saying, "But I don't have cancer, and I'm not," this isn't relevant to me. Well, maybe you don't have cancer, sir or ma'am, but you probably know someone who is dealing with it. And you can
Yes.
come alongside those people because you've just heard testimony how important that is, because the day may come when you need a friend. It's good to
Yes.
make deposits in that, what I call the love bank. Make deposits into the love bank so that when you make a withdrawal, there's something there to withdraw from. I
Correct.
harvested something from your website, which I will put it's not the only website that you have, confrontingcancerwithfaith.com. Part of my job here is to do reconnaissance on our guest because in many cases I've never met them. And I came across something on your website, and it was buried in the books section. It really wasn't up in the front. So I wanted to kind of bring it up front because it hit me very hard. It hit me. This is very profound, or it was for me. There are 4 stages that you have identified in the journey for cancer, people who are dealing with cancer. And each one, in terms of confronting with faith, needs a different or separate approach. The first stage is suspicion.
Yeah, suspicion right at the get go. When you have that suspicion, and this is the medical side of me speaking because I come from a healthcare background, you need to act on it. I mean, you don't need to sit there and wonder. You need to act on it and have things checked out. Honestly, I waited surprisingly longer than I should have. And I felt the prompting of the Lord to tell me it's time to move and to act upon this suspicion. So I did, and I was glad that I did. In fact, surprisingly, my diagnosis of, I guess you could say, myself in some respects, was not from the primary site, it was from a secondary site. So I felt that the Lord used that secondary site to alert me to the suspicion that something was wrong. And my body felt it, and I needed to act upon that. And then I wanted to keep it to myself, but that was not the best choice after, after the fact. And I had to kind of backstep a little bit on that one when I didn't tell my husband about my suspicion. So suspicion is an important step because that's the alert, and you can actually get medical intervention sooner rather than later.
Next phase, treatment.
Treatment, now I got the big three. And what that means is I had surgery, I had chemotherapy, and I had radiation. But the treatment is different for everyone. It depends upon the cancer type, the cancer size, the stage that it might be in, as to how it would be treated. Of course, 20 years ago, treatments were a little different than they are now. But then, for me, I had the choice to be able to do surgery first and then followed by the chemotherapy, because it did involve lymph nodes, and then move from that into the radiation, which was elongated to some extent and a little more difficult for me actually than the chemotherapy was. So the treatment varies from person to person, but it's important, I felt, to go through that treatment and not use alternative measures at that time. And that worked for me.
Remission.
Remission, well, that's what we all want to hear. We all want to hear clean margins from the surgeon. We all want to complete the treatment and to hear that we are in remission and that all the cancer has been gotten and it's gone. Do we feel comfortable with that? I don't think so. I mean, I didn't, not at first, because you always wonder, okay, you're in remission now.
For how long?
What about next year? What about next month? You really don't know. So there's not a sense of relief for an extended period of time. And that's where the spiritual component has to kick in, because you have got to let God be part of this process. You've got to find your contentment, your healing, his plan or will, whatever that may be, in him. So remission, while it may be short-lived or not at all, is in his hands. And I think the sooner you can accept that, the better you are. That you can be at peace, whatever that result may be.
Well, the word is troublesome. Remission means what it says. It means remission. It doesn't mean, it's like there's this skeleton in your closet, that could come out at any time. And it can take a psychological toll on you. But it can take a spiritual toll on you. But that spiritual toll can be either good or bad. And I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit and preach, folks. None of us are getting out of here alive. I don't know if you've given that any thought, but we're all gonna die. Mortality is a reality.
Right.
But we can use that awareness of mortality to create a motive and a sense of urgency about God's purpose in our life. We can't put it off. We don't know. There are it
Absolutely.
in the, there are some good things if you have gone through what you've gone through. Does it serve to? Do you think those thoughts, that urgent, got to do it now? You don't know how long you've got. The older we get, the more those thoughts occupy our minds.
Well, I mean, it's biblical. Life is but a breath. We don't know what our next day is, and that's the importance of living fully today in the presence, being godly messengers, spreading joy, cheer of good news. And I recall, wow, I really struggled with being called a survivor. And you would think, but that's a good thing. Well, of course it's a good thing, but it also means, okay, if I'm a survivor, then that could mean it could come back again. And that's where I was, surprisingly. And I had to reconcile to that, to realize that it was okay, that I was in God's time, and that He held my tomorrows, and I needed to live today.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how I was able to find peace with that component of being a survivor, until finally I realized that being part of the survivor club, if you will, was a good thing. And I did not need to shirk myself from that. And I could use it to be able to encourage other people and to bring the hope for other survivors going through this process.
Well, then finally we come to that elephant in the room that nobody wants to acknowledge, is the end of life diagnosis.
Yes. End of life, having been a hospice volunteer for many years, is part of life. And end of life is something that we can learn to accept. I think it's great, actually, personally, to talk about it, to plan for it, to be prepared for it. And it is in God's plan that we prepare as we should as believers, because we know that end of life is just the beginning of a new life in heaven. And of course, our eternity started before we were born. So it is just that next phase of life as we know it. And end of life is not something as a believer that we necessarily need to be afraid of. And I'm not saying that we yearn for it, but I have found at times that looking forward to heaven versus sometimes this evil world doesn't sound like such a bad thing. Do I want to hurry it up? No, because I want to fulfill all my days, and I want to use them for His purpose, for His glory, in the best way I know how.
This has motivated you in many ways, but among them is a book. You have written a book, and I am absolutely doing backflips over the title, Confronting Cancer with Faith. And the
Right.
operative word there is not cancer. It's
No.
confronting.
Yes.
It's not dealing with. It's not coping with. It's not avoiding. It's confronting. It is taking offense. Is that the tone of the book?
That is the tone of the book, because you can confront it with fear or other emotions, but when you confront it with faith, it gives purpose. It gives purpose for a diagnosis that you didn't want. You can grow through that by confronting it. And that is why I use the symbols on the front of the cover, to show you're head to head with cancer. And that means you need to put your armor on. You need to put the helmet, the shield, all of it. And where do we get that from? Well, we know as believers that that armor comes from God, and we have an armor of faith, and we can use that. And it's important to use that. And we can confront our, greatest fear with faith. And we can do that with anything, not just cancer. It can be any kind of chronic illness or, devastation, whatever may be in your life. When we confront it with faith, then I feel like we're going to Christian battle. As a Christian, we are going into battle. And quite honestly, I like to have the concept of, hey, I've got my flag, my white flag of surrender, because you know why? I want God to be the winner. And to do that, I need to let him. I need to confront this issue to allow him to show me what to do, guide me where to go, how to do it, and to get my army behind me.
Well, did you hear the bell? That that must be time to do something. We went. JD was being the gentleman that he is, has granted extra time and has deferred the start of his program to allow you to share whatever God has on your mind. And I assure you that the people in the chat room have been sitting on the edges of their seat, and you have blessed us. Karen, you are a testimony of the strength of Christ living in all of us. We're all, maybe it's not cancer. It could be economic hardship. It could be loss of a job. It could be loss of a relationship. There are so many battles that we
Mental
fight.
illness
Cancer
too.
is yeah,
That
mental
is,
illness. Yeah.
yes,
Um,
that's another area that I have been introduced to with through my friend, and we have confronted it in the same way. So every
champions.
battle can be fought and won through faith when
Through
you've got God on your side.
Yeah, well, we won 2,000 years ago. We're just running the clock out down here.
That's right.
Well, I'm actually running the score up down here, but you know what I'm saying. Okay. Um, uh,
JD, thank you. You are
he is a,
such a treasure to me. I just want to say that out loud. You have been such an encourager. I love you. I love your ranch. I love the name of your ranch and all that you do. And I have listened to you on this show before, and you are such a testimony to so many people, so many writers, and I am glad to call you friend. Thank you for your time and for your friendship.
well, that was a good way to give the last moment of her time in tribute to a mutual friend, JD Winnett. Speaking of, oh, by the way, there you are. You are directly high above the Eagle's Nest, the broadcast facilities here at pjnet.tv, where this program originates. And but we're not done. We're going to get a late start with JD Winninger. He is coming up in just a few moments. We have been so blessed. I hope that if you have watched this and haven't been to our chat room, you're not doing the internet right. You, it's really good. It is so great to have a family of fellowship at pjnet.tv. I live for this, and so many others have joined us in this journey together, and it's just you all are a blessing to me, and it's great to have a good team, and we got a good team. We got the best team. Hey, listen, JD will be coming up in just a few moments, but as I leave, anytime I have the opportunity to speak to the public, whether that is 5 people or 500, however, I end the same way, regardless of the subject matter that is spoken about, because it's heavy on my heart. It's 2 questions. They're not hard. On the other hand, they can be very hard. Here's the first question. What is the boldest thing that you have ever done for Jesus Christ? And the second question, how long ago was that? You see, we've just heard testimony about living our lives each day. We've only got so many days here. It's going to take courage. We heard about the armor of God, the belt, the boot, the helmet, the shield, the sword. It takes courage. So, I certainly hope, as you reflect on those two questions, that we'll never be satisfied with either answer.